Hello everyone and welcome back to this channel. My name is Patricia Reiners and I am working as a freelance UX designer in Berlin. So my focus is innovation, XR, future technologies, and research is an essential part of that process, or also of all the the things that I offer to clients, right? Because everything you come up with need to be tested at some point, and you need to have any kind of data to come up with innovative projects. So research is super important for my day-to-day life. I have been involved in many research projects, and in this video I want to share my framework with you, how to choose the right research method. And if you don't choose the right research method, you won't get the insight that you actually need. I'm going to share with you my framework, which consists of 3 simple steps. Let's get started with the first one. Usually, when you start research, it's that someone presents you with a problem, like a research problem. Maybe it's even yourself if you're working on a project as a designer and you realize there are some questions that you need to have, that you need to answer. And here comes already the most important part. Before you jump into solutions or into methods or into planning or anything like that, really take one step back and make sure that you understand the full picture of the research problem you are currently facing. Make sure to understand the objectives, the goals, the background information of that research and of the problem, of the product you are working with. So really clarify the context. So for me, as a freelance designer, to be honest, I have never gotten a perfectly framed research briefing, never in my life. It was always very vague and very unspecific, and I was usually the person or another researcher who needed to frame that into something we could work with. So think again about who are the target audience for the product you're working on or the feature you're currently building. What was the problem that this feature you want to test or the product you want to test should actually solve? And what question do you want to have answered after the research? So why are you think research is a good thing at that point of the design process? So don't jump into methods right away. Really take one step back. Think about all the requirements, all the objectives, everything that you already know about the project, and also maybe there's one feature that you want to test or that you want to do research on. So do some very strategic planning before you choose a method. So the second part of that framework is really thinking about all the methods. And after you went through the planning, you definitely got all the data that is important to choose the right method. So what is important when it comes to research methods? So the first important thing to decide on is in which phase does the project stand right now, or the research in general. The second is, do we want to choose a quantitative or a qualitative research method? And number 3 is, do we want to use an attitudinal or a behavioral research method? Let's talk about them really briefly. First is the phases of the research process. So you probably know about the double diamond approach, the different phases of the design thinking process or the human-centered design approach. So you have those different phases you go through. And in the very beginning of a project or when you're just starting out, you have a very vague general problem statement, and it becomes more and more specific throughout those solutions. And based on those different stages, you use different research method, right? Because your problem becomes more specific. So for your own project, think about where are you in this process? Then we have qualitative and quantitative, and this is probably not new for you. This is really like the basics of the research, but I want to talk about it very briefly. Quantitative is basically answering the what of a question, right? So, for example, if you want to know what kind of phone users are using or what kind of device they're using to enter or to visit a certain website, you probably would use the quantitative method. You need a high amount of users, and with that approach you would understand the what. So what kind of device would users use to go on a specific website. This is like an analytical approach, and you then would see maybe it's the iPhone, for example, it's the smartphone. So it answers the question of like what device. If you want to know why users are using the phone, for example, or why they are clicking on the certain button, or why they are not proceeding the checkout process, or why the conversion rate is really low. All those kind of things are really answering the why, where it goes into like interviews, where you do any kind of field studies, where you observe users and understand their why. You do that with interviews, with open-ended questions, and really let them talk and observe them. So I think what's really important to highlight here is that for the quantitative approach, you need a high amount of users. Of course, this depends a little bit on the method. Here you can see a graph, I think, which shows pretty great like how many users you more or less need for certain methods. So with the qualitative approach, you need definitely less users, but all those sessions go much more into depth. And then point number 3 are the behavioral and the attitudinal method. So what is the difference? When it comes to the behavioral methods, so behavioral is very much about behaving, right? So it's about doing. What is the user actually doing? How is he using a certain product? How is he using the feature? So it's about behaving. And attitudinal is like the name already says it. It's about the attitude, it's about the feel, the belief, also the opinion of the user towards a certain feature or product. And this is self-reported by users. And he has a pretty interesting graph that really shows the differences also when it comes to like choosing behavioral and attitudinal methods, and then thinking about where are you in that product life cycle. Okay, so point number 3 is, after we have talked about the different some kind of categories that are important, or those different buckets that are important when it comes to choosing a method. Now you can think about like all the methods, you know, all the methods you've heard of, all the methods you've already done, so basically all the methods, and now you can choose them. Because I think what's interesting, or what gets pretty obvious, is that most of the methods are some kind of like cross-referencing different of the buckets I mentioned, right? So they're not just like only qualitative, but they also might be qualitative behavioral. And that's how those interesting looking graphs are actually coming together. So first of all, really think about like which stage of the project are you right now. Do you need to know how people behave or how they use a certain product or feature, or do you know what they feel, so what their attitude towards something? And what kind of data or what kind of questions? Is it a what or a why question? So is this quantitative or qualitative? So of course, what and why question. And what might be very helpful for you to choose the right methods are these 2 graphs from the Nielsen-Norman group. You probably already know them. If you don't know about the questions that you need to have answered beforehand, then that might look a little bit confusing. But once you answer those questions, it's pretty straightforward and really helps you to choose the right method. Also, if you want to dig a little bit deeper into research, UX research, if you are a research beginner and really want to get some kind of like an intro of research, I can highly recommend you my UX research course on Domestika. I'm going to add a special promotion code for you in the description box where you get a super good price. You can just check it out and do the whole course. It's about different methods, it's about qualitative interviews, how to do a research plan with a lot of resources, and yeah, basically everything you need to know. Especially I think if you are a UX designer or a UI designer and really want to understand research and get the basics out of it. I personally think, or my experience is that knowing the basics of research is a game changer for you if you're working as a UX designer. Super helpful for your career and really helps you also to understand when research is really needed and what are the resources for it. So yeah, very helpful. Check out the course, let me know what you think, and if you have any questions, feel free to just post them in the comments in the question thing below. I am happy to answer them, or just say hi on Instagram and drop me a question there. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope this was very helpful for you and you are able to choose the right research method now. Yes, thank you so much. See you next week.